Oh man, you ever stop and think about how much data we put out there just doing our jobs,
Every single day.
Like even just applying for a job online.
Yeah.
You're handing over resumes, references, salary history.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely makes you think.
And it all ties into something super relevant, especially here in Jamaica with the new Data Protection Act coming into play, data privacy. It's a big one for HR, right?
Huge. It's interesting, though, because...
And that's exactly what we're diving into today, how to navigate this new world of data privacy for you, for HR professionals, for everyone, really.
Right, right.
Now, we're basing this deep dive on a recent design privacy workshop.
Okay, yeah.
They had their founder, Chukwuemeka Cameron, leading it, and HR expert Tracey Wallace. So some real heavy hitters in the field.
For sure. So this workshop, one of the big takeaways, it really highlighted how data privacy, it's not just an IT thing anymore or a legal thing. It's a core HR function now, which is, I think, where a lot of people are still kind of.
It's a big shift, for sure. But what does that actually look like? What needs to change, practically speaking, for HR?
I think the biggest thing is the realization that HR departments, they're the guardians of all this employee data,
That makes sense.
And with this Data Protection Act, it means HR, they now have a legal responsibility to make sure that data is collected right, stored properly, processed transparently. It really does touch everything.
Oh, yeah.
From recruitment and onboarding all the way to managing benefits or dealing with grievances.
So it's about weaving data protection into, like, the very fabric of what HR does.
Exactly that.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of responsibility, one thing I found really interesting about this workshop is that they spent a good chunk of time talking about the role of the data protection officer.
The DPO, right?
Yeah, the DPO is a big one. Were there any, major concerns that came up from HR professionals about actually making this role a reality, implementing it?
Oh, tons. I mean, the biggest one, I think, was just qualifications, like what makes a good DPO? What should they know? What's their background?
Right.
Because it's such a new thing. And then the other big one was conflicts of interest, especially for smaller companies where the roles might be, one person doing a bunch of things.
Right, yeah. Can you give an example of what that kind of conflict might look like?
Sure. Let's say you've got a small company, your IT manager. They're also the DPO, right? To do their IT job, they need access to all sorts of employee data system logs, browsing history, all that. But as the DPO, they're also the ones making sure no one's improperly accessing that data.
It's like they're policing themselves.
Yeah. It's tricky. You need really clear policies and procedures to navigate that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So how did the workshop address these concerns, the qualifications, the potential conflicts, all of that?
Well, they actually launched a few tools, which I thought was really smart.
Okay.
First off, to tackle the qualifications thing head on, they came up with this DPO Competency Framework.
Okay, what is that?
So basically, it lists out all the essential skills, the knowledge that someone needs to be effective as a DPO.
Ah, so it's kind of like a roadmap almost.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can use it for recruiting, for training, for figuring out, okay, this is what a good DPO looks like.
Gotcha. That's really helpful. What about the conflict of interest issue, especially for those smaller companies where resources are stretched thin already?
Yeah, and this is where Cameron had some really interesting advice. He basically said, look, smaller companies, they might not have the means to have a dedicated DPO right off the bat.
Yeah, makes sense.
And that's okay. He actually suggested considering outsourcing it at first, almost like you'd bring in a consultant for a specific project, Get that expert help while you build up your internal capacity.
Well, I like that. It's like if you're building a house, you might hire an architect, even if you plan on doing some of the work yourself.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So it sounds like they're really trying to, give companies the tools they need rather than just saying, you have to figure this out.
Absolutely. And they didn't stop there. On top of that competency framework, they also launched a DPO Assessment App and... Are you ready for this? An open DPO community.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. An app, a whole community. Tell me more. How do these things work, especially for HR professionals trying to make sense of all this?
So the app, it's really cool. It's designed to objectively score potential DPO candidates. So, no more relying on just gut feeling during interviews.
Right.
It takes the competency framework, and you basically assess candidates based on that.
So you can really see if they have the chops to walk the walk, not just talk the talk?
Exactly. You see their strengths, you see their weaknesses, makes the whole hiring process much smoother. And then the open DPO community.
Yeah, tell me about that. What is that, like a forum or something?
It's a way to stay in the loop, you know?
Okay.
It's an online space where DPOs, whether they're just starting out or they've been doing it for years, can connect, they can share resources, get updates on best practices
Which is huge because this field is changing so fast.
constantly. So that kind of resource is really invaluable, I think.
It's amazing to see these steps being taken here in Jamaica, honestly.
Yeah.
But this isn't just a Jamaican thing, is it? I feel like data privacy is becoming like a global conversation now.
You're 100% right. We've seen these data protection regulations
Yeah.
popping up all over the world.
Yeah.
GDPR in Europe, that's the General Data Protection Regulation.
Correct.
CCPA in California, the California Consumer Privacy Act. There's definitely a global shift happening.
It really feels like the future of responsible business, no matter where you are.
It really does. And it makes me wonder, these tools that we've been talking about, the framework, the app, the community, even though they were developed in a Jamaican context,
Right.
how might they be used by other organizations, other industries around the world?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's something for everyone listening to chew on. Because, yeah, it is a brave new world out there.
It is.
But at least we're starting to see the tools and resources to help us navigate it, which is a good feeling,
Absolutely.
So much to think about.